Hey again, friends. From the dawn of time, when the first man found the first big rock, he's used it to get a little silly. This trend has persisted all throughout human history, forming what is commonly known as human history. Not satisfied with the amount of real-life rock attacks, man turned to the digital rock, which brings us to the topic of this video. Hotline Miami is a fast-paced, top-down shooter and is one of the best games on Steam, and there's nothing you or the authorities can do to stop me from talking about it. Missions begin in your apartment where voices in your head command you to kill. I'm just kidding, that'd be stupid. It's the digital age. The voices leave messages on your answering machine. These messages sound like mundane tasks, but are in fact coded orders, a la Pizzagate. You arrive at the address you were given and find it swarming with enemies. But don't worry, these are Russian mobsters. Brutal, hardened criminals. Which makes us the good guy. Speaking of which, you play as Jacket. Jacket is a schizophrenic man with an army of personas that help him take on the mob. The combat in this game is fantastic. While you may be single-handedly clearing out these buildings full of mobsters, you aren't John Wick. Bullets will kill you. In fact, everything will kill you, and in one hit. Luckily, you can see through walls, so you can use that to your advantage and go in with a plan. Or you can just stand around a corner with a baseball bat. That also tends to work pretty well. The game has a wide variety of weapons for you to choose from, but there's no loadouts. Unless you pick a mask that lets you start with a weapon, you're going to begin every mission empty-handed. Your weapon is currently being held by that guy, and it's up to you to take it from him. There are 3 categories of weapons in this game: guns, melee weapons, and throwables. Guns are the easy way to kill enemies. Hypothetically, just point and click. They can also shoot through yellow walls. I'd forgive you for not knowing or remembering that, because it's only useful information for one mission in the entire game. Guns are great, but have one major weakness. They have a limited amount of ammo. And because you didn't bring the gun, you also didn't bring any reserve ammo, meaning you can't reload. You may not have reserve ammo, but what you do have here is reserve enemies, holding fresh guns that are ripe for the taking. As you play the game, you should view the level as an arsenal that wants to hurt you. Something to keep in mind is that guns aren't useless just because they're out of ammo. Guns have mass, and mass times acceleration equals a concussion. Any weapon you have can be thrown at enemies to knock them down, which disarms them. From there, you can either deal a finisher or pick up their weapon and loom over them menacingly, waiting for the second they dare to stand back up. One last thing to keep in mind when it comes to guns is that they make noise. Firing a single shot will often go unnoticed to enemies in other rooms, but repeated use of firearms will draw in other enemies, so make sure you have the ammo or melee weapon to deal with them. Now, on to melee weapons. The first difference is, I've never seen a man try to reload a baseball bat. Secondly, they're completely silent, letting you burst into a room and completely clear it out without alerting half the level. There's a few different melee weapons in the game, but they all function generally the same with different animations. Personal favorite is the machete. There are 2 main downsides to melee weapons. The first is their range. Unless you get the drop on them, henchmen with guns can blast you away pretty quickly. The second weakness, which is much harder to deal with, is these big boys. Trying to melee them is suicide. They can only be killed by guns, preferably with a shotgun, but weaker rounds will do if you use enough of them. There's one last trick when it comes to melee weapons. The ultimate tactic. Doors. If an enemy is on the other side of the door when you kick it in, they'll be knocked down. Doors can then be reset and kicked in again. I like to bait a group of enemies to rush me while I abuse a door and swing wildly with a melee weapon. This is a suitable substitute for skill. Lastly, we have throwable weapons. Weapons that can be thrown at enemies. I don't know what more you want from me. You'll get familiar with all of these because, like I said, you're at the mercy of what the game decides to give you. One choice you do get to make is what mask you wear. All of them except the default Richard mask gives you some sort of power. Huh. Richard the Rooster. A lot of dick jokes one could make. Some of my favorite masks are Don Juan, which makes door kicks lethal, and Ted, which makes dogs friendly to you. It unfortunately doesn't make you friendly to dogs. At the end of each mission, you get ranked on a few different stats. The ones I really want to drill into you are boldness, time, and combo. If you want to score high on levels, you're going to want to play as fast and reckless as possible. There's no actual penalty for death in this game, so Feel free to experiment and just really get in there and have fun, champ. Most levels are made from the same DNA, but there are some special levels that have really cool moments. There's a few missions where you can find other masked killers running around.
I thought what we had was special.
Most of the time these guys are already dead, but there is one mission where you find one alive, tied to a chair being interrogated by some mobsters. Unfortunately, us both wearing masks doesn't make us a team, and it certainly doesn't make this a rescue mission. One mission has a surprise boss fight after you think the level's already over. After I changed my pants, I discovered you can actually cheese this fight really easily by just standing right here and shooting twice with a shotgun. There's another mission where you manage to rescue/kidnap a woman from the Russians. She starts living with you, which leads to a long and prosperous relation.
Oh shit! Alright!
As you may have guessed, there's a story to this game, and an amazing one at that. So good that my original script covering it turned out to be over 12 pages long, before I decided it's a story better lived than told. Here's some bits from that script I wasn't willing to let die. Minor story spoilers, I guess, but they don't have the context, so After a short fight, you calmly bash his head in with a golf club, and that's the end of that. You can't see, but I'm winking. There's also a sniper aiming at the top floor whose laser you need to avoid. I personally had trouble with this as I was using a cat mask. Now that the feds are off our back, let's get a good hot slice of Beard's fucking dead. This dude gets shot in the dick. This guy's a gamer. He's big, he's messy, but most of all, he's racist. I highly encourage you to play the game for yourself. It's about $10 on Steam at full price, but it goes on sale for only a few dollars. If you do try it out, which again, I'm highly suggesting you do, should you find yourself hungering for more, there's a sequel, which I also highly recommend. Thanks for watching, and if you want more like this in the future, email me your credit card info.